All right, lots to unpack. I'm being joined now from Sweden by Aso Saleh. He is a journalist and Kurdish politics analyst. Mr. Saleh, thank you so much for making time for us. I want to start off with your area of expertise. Let's quickly get into the statement that came in from Trump. He had mentioned that there could perhaps be an uprising from the Iranian Kurds. And very soon there was a U-turn on that. Anything that you've picked up on what could have caused that statement and perhaps what caused the U-turn more than anything else of the Iranian Kurds, perhaps leading to an armed uprising within Iran? Because that's the only form of boots on ground that perhaps would be in favor of the US and Israel at this point.
So that is a question, actually. Mr. President said something, but in the practice, is it correct or not? So we are going to see in the maybe coming days. But as I see, according to the statement by the United States President in previous week and the U.S. Secretary of the Defense or the War, the United States has the capability to continue this war for weeks or maybe months. So on the other hand, as your report showed, that it appears that the capability of the Iranian regime decreased so much. So, and it appears that one of the possible outcomes of this war could be that country turning into a so-called failed state. So, and ultimately, it result the overthrow of this regime and the government. So, in this context, actually, the use of ground forces becomes important. So, the United States and Israel may not want to deploy their own armed or ground troops inside the Iran. So, therefore, using the Iranian groups which are armed would be significant in this regard. So Kurdish parties have experienced, well-trained forces, and for this reason I believe that if this war continues, and one of the purposes, and this war should be the overthrowing of the regime, the Kurdish parties are very important and they have very significant importance.
Understood. Mr. Saleh, when you say overthrow of this current regime, how do you see that happening? Because as far as the Supreme Leader is concerned, he was assassinated, eliminated on the first day itself, but very soon there will be a new name. The council has already been taken charge. It has taken charge. President is very much in place. And then as far as their battle, as far as their the way they are conducting the war at this point, they are sticking to their protocols as were already determined before the elimination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And then there are constant statements coming in from Ali Larijani, who's taken a rather significant role. There seem to be new heads propping up when the earlier commanders have been eliminated. What would a change of regime at this point require?
I think that is the difference that we are seeing in this war compared to the previous 12 days war in previous summer. So the previous summer at the war, 12-day war, the Israel especially, they just eliminated the top leaders, and the regime and the institutions remained. But at this time, I think the attacks are significant, and they are not only eliminating the high commanders or maybe the supreme leader. The Iranian regime is not like, for instance, Venezuela, or not like the Iraqi Saddam. This regime leadership based on institutions, and for that purpose, to overthrowing that regime, you need to attack their institutions. I believe the main purpose is to reach that point that the regime will become a failed state. So even if they have institutions for leadership, different type of institutions, military and political and economic, but still they don't have any function. So when they don't have any functionality, so it means that they are a failed state. And I believe the people of Iran, they are not so happy with this regime. So maybe at that point, the pressure from the people and maybe military pressure from the US and Israel and maybe Kurdish parties will overthrow the regime.
All right, Mr. Saleh, let's now also talk about the reports that surfaced regarding countries from the GCC carrying out attacks on Iran. There were earlier reports suggesting that Qatar had done so. Qatar retracted. They said, no, we have not done any such thing. Days later, earlier today, UAE, again, similar reports suggesting that UAE has carried out an attack on Iran. UAE was quick to say that we have not been involved in any such action. Both these reports, they surfaced from Israel first. Anything that you pick up in terms of setting a narrative here, or an intra-West Asia war which is perhaps being plugged, or is that reading too much into it?
Actually, this is very significant because this is something the regime had always threatened the world. That is, the world drag into that it would drag in the region into the war. And over the past 8 days, the regime has done exactly that, as you mentioned. In addition to attacking Israel and US bases in the region, it has also stuck some infrastructure, maybe oil refineries and civilian areas, hotels in the neighboring countries. So one of the regime's goal, besides indirectly pressuring Israel, especially, and maybe United States as well, through these countries to end the war, it has been to increase oil prices as well. As you know, almost 2 hours ago, one of the IRGC commanders, he said that the world should prepare for $200 oil price. So this is very important for the oil capacity, for the economic of the world. But it appears that it showed exactly in your report that the missile capacity of the regime 90% decreased, the drone capacity 83%. So it means that when Iran's military capacity has been significantly reduced, so such that statements are more propaganda than reality. So I think in the coming days, we are going to see that these attacks are going to stop.
Let me now come to your immediate neighborhood, Mr. Saleh, Norway, the blast near the US Embassy in Oslo. Is that setting, because it is being probed as a terror attack, what does that tell us about where this is heading? Because that's nowhere close to Iran or any of the nations which are in the midst of the fire at this point.
Yeah, Norway is a peace country. It has been some negotiations in that country, even between the regime and the Kurdish parties many years ago in that country. And both, actually, Norway and Sweden, they have some gangs that they have very big networks, and right now they have very good relationship with the Iranian regime. One of their leader arrested in Iran, and after several days they became free again. And after that we saw an attack to the Israeli embassy in Stockholm. It was, I think, last summer. So we have such that gangs here in Sweden and Norway. And today, the security organization, in Sweden, they say that we are going to maybe face such that attacks here in Sweden. And also the US embassy had some statement about that today. So it is very clear that Iranian regime has different ways to attack the Western countries' interest. One of them is to carry out terrorist attacks in these countries. We saw last week one terrorist attack in United States, and maybe we are going to see such that attacks in the European countries as well.
Well, the fight reaching a country like Norway is definitely, I mean, everything that we're seeing, and far as the attacks on the desalination plants as well, I mean, that is a next level of elevation. And the fact that it is now reaching Norway, if it really turns out to be a terror attack, that is going to be extremely alarming, because now it's not just a regional West Asia war, then it is touching Scandinavian nation as well. Let's wait and watch. We'll need to discuss this further as the developments keep coming. That was Aso Saleh joining us from Sweden.
Thank you.